So when I was a kid, I loved to go fishing with my dad. And we always had a lot of fun. The only thing I guess that wasn't very fun about it is that he could catch fish all day long.
Yeah.
And I couldn't catch anything.
Oh, no.
And so I would get frustrated, sooner or later saying, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong?
Right.
And my dad always had the exact same advice. He said, son, if you want to catch a fish, you got to think like a fish.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you something, that advice didn't help me at all.
Right.
Because I thought, well, first of all, I'm not a fish. I don't know how to think like a fish. But I reasoned, even if I did, what difference does it make how I think?
Yeah.
I want the fish to bite the hook. What do I got to do to get that to happen?
Right.
And he just stayed with that same advice. Think like a fish, think like a fish. Finally, after a few years, I think I started understanding what he was talking about.
Yeah.
Which was, if you want to catch a fish, you have to learn to think about the things that fish think about.
It's awesome.
So I went down to the library. I checked out every book on fish that they had. I joined several fishing magazines and even went to the local bass club and started to attend the meetings. And I learned all kinds of things.
Yeah.
For example, a fish is a cold-blooded animal, which means you have to be very careful about looking for them in the right water temperature.
Okay.
They tend to want to be in warmer water when they can because it's a little easier for them to maintain their metabolism there. But sometimes if the water's too warm, they want to be in colder water.
Right.
And so think about it like this. Water's always warmer in direct sunlight than it is in the shade. That makes sense?
Yes.
But fish won't sit in direct sunlight because they don't have any eyelids and the sun hurts their eyes.
Wow. I don't think I even knew that.
Yeah. So the water tends to be warmer at the surface than it does way down deep, right? But a fish won't sit at the surface of the water all day long.
Yeah.
Because most of the food's at the bottom.
Yes. Yeah.
And besides that, if they sat at the surface of the water, it might be too easy for a bird to swoop down and get them.
Right.
So the more I learned about fish, the more I understood where I could find them, and I got a lot better at catching them. Fast forward a few years and got involved in professional sales.
Yeah.
Started attending all kinds of training seminars and reading books on sales. And everything that I was taught and read was all about, here's how top salespeople think.
Yeah.
Here are the actions top salespeople should take.
Right.
Here's what a top salesperson should do. Nothing that I read or listened to or was taught had anything to do with customers.
Wow.
But my dad never once said, if you want to catch a fish, you need to think like a fisherman.
Right. He
said you think like a fish.
That's right.
So to me, it seems to make sense that if we want to better understand customers and what drives them to buy or not buy, if we really want to get in tune with customers, we need to think like the customer.
Yeah.
Or more specifically, learn to think about the things that customers think about.
I love it. And I want to hear how it applies to sales and leadership.
Yeah, and it really does apply very well because when we're thinking about engaging with customers or with clients, what we really want to understand is why they would buy something in the first place.
Right.
So there are a lot of things you and I could go do to try to sell.
Right.
What I think that salespeople should focus more on is understanding why customers buy and how customers buy. And really understanding the psychology behind the buying process, the things they're going to have to do to decide, do we really need to take action on something? And if we do want to take action, who would we want to take action with? Who would we want to partner with to solve some kind of a problem, what have you? And so I put together a little model when I started teaching this concept that is pretty simple. And I started just writing it on a whiteboard or on a flip chart here and there, but then I turned it into some slides that became a really pivotal part of our training. And it seems like everybody can relate to this, and so I want to jump right into this. I want our viewers and listeners to know that I put a copy of this diagram in the notes, in the description here. So if they want to go download this, there's a link. They can download this for free if they want to see the visual, but I'll do my best to explain this whether you see the visual or not. So I like to think about a customer buying behavior as a simple understanding of where they are today and where they want to go.
Right.
So if we start to engage with the client by seeking to understand what is their world like right now, I call this point A. It's where it begins. So this is the first engagement us with a client, or it could be even before we engage with them. We might do some research online or do some research via AI to better understand their business, how they operate, where they operate, kinds of systems and tools that already might be in place, how they're structured, et cetera. And what I want to be able to do is to understand and put myself in their shoes.
Yeah.
If I were the CIO or the CFO of this organization, what would be some of the things that I would be thinking about?
Right.
Yeah.
What's going on in your mind? Yes.
And I think that today, this is easier to do than it's ever been because when I started out, the only way I learned an industry, for example, let's say manufacturing, I sold to manufacturing for years, is I had to read books and magazines on the subject.
Yeah.
And I had to go visit customers being clueless.
Yeah.
And they'd take me on a plant tour sometimes, right, to get a little education, understand what they do and how they do it. Today, anybody that wants to learn about an industry can go right out to one of these AI chat platforms and say, I want to do some research on what it would be like to be the CEO of a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
Or the CFO of an oil and gas company, or maybe the chief merchandising officer of a retailer. I want to understand the world they're living in.
Yeah.
Tell me about the top 10 things that might occupy their mind.
Right.
The top 5 or 10 challenges they're faced with on a daily basis. Tell me the top 10 or 20 goals they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And furthermore, give me some questions that I could ask of that executive that would help to open the door and create a dialogue that I could potentially turn that into a sales opportunity.
Yeah.
There was a time when I made a living teaching people this. And now you can do it for nothing. Right on ChatGPT
but it's still not interacting,
Copilot
right?
or IBM Watson. Here's the point with this. We should leverage AI all that we can.
That's right.
Because there's still a lot of, once you have this knowledge, applying that to the things you're going to say.
Yeah.
And practicing saying it. Because last I checked, I can't show up to see the customer with my phone and say, ask ChatGPT to like interview the client.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to have to do it, right?
There is a part of this that the human needs to come in and actually apply what the resources have provided. That's fine, but we need to apply it.
So we should leverage that. But then the question is how do we ask those diagnostic questions? How do we apply what we've learned here to really enter a conversation with a client around their point A? It's their current states, where they are right now.
Yes.
Because what we're looking for is we're looking for some kind of a discrepancy or a disparity, I like to say, between where they are and where they'd like to be.
Right.
But I think it starts by really seeking to understand how they do things today, what the challenges they might be faced with, pain, problem, need, issue, concern, call it what you will. But I like to think of it as some sort of dissatisfaction with the current state. And I'll go one step further. We should dig into what's the cost of this dissatisfaction. What is the consequence to that?
Right.
So I always like to make sure people know that unless you apply and can really understand the consequence to a problem, it becomes a problem they never get around solving.
Yeah. And then they're just stuck. Yeah.
So if we can help to define that consequence, or I like to say quantify the consequence with how many dollars we're losing, how many dollars we're not earning, how much time we're wasting, how many people are quitting.
Yes.
A lot of different variables here in terms of how we would quantify value, which I'm going to cover in a future episode, by the way.
Yeah.
But if we can understand what they don't like about their current state, then we can start to ask good diagnostic questions about, well, what if you solve this problem? What would happen? What if you could reduce this? What good thing would occur? And so we're working toward then understanding their future state, which I call point C.
Right.
Now, think about it like this. A salesperson wants to get from point A, where I find out the client what they need, and they want to get right to point B, where we sell something.
Yes.
Boom.
Immediate.
Let's get a transaction going. But I've found that when you rush to talk about solution after you've defined problem, there's still a lot of resistance around that because it's going to cost something. They're not certain that they have to do it at this time. To get customers to be more likely to move forward with the transaction, we need to explore that desired future state, which I call point C.
Yeah.
So at the desired future state, we want to quantify that as well.
Yeah.
How much time would this save you? How much money would this save you? How much heartache would you not have to go through? How much downtime could you avoid?
Right.
How much customer churn? How much could you return your customer churn?
Yeah.
It's putting a quantified unit of measure on the outcome.
Yeah.
Now, the reason this is so important is if I can define what it's costing them to stay where they're at, and define what they could gain in terms of measurable value at that desired future state, that becomes the justification for why they'd want to spend some money with me at point B. And so this diagram basically says we want to understand point A, then look at point C before we come back to B.
Yeah, and how do we do that on a day-to-day basis? You know, what does that look like?
Yeah, good question. So first of all is that we'd be well served to define some good diagnostic questions that we could ask if we got somebody live on the telephone or in a video conference, but we could also even literally ask these via email.
Yeah.
Or what other correspondence we're using, whether we're reaching out via LinkedIn, et cetera.
Yeah.
These diagnostic questions about current state problems. Do you guys have an issue with fill in the blank?
Yes.
Have you ever experienced such and such?
Yeah.
What is it costing you because you're encountering so and so?
Yeah.
Many of our clients have complained they're losing fill in the blank.
Yeah.
How is that impacting your organization? So I can weave these kinds of questions right into any kind of correspondence, even if I'm not selling live. So I like to call it synchronous versus asynchronous. If I've got a synchronous conversation, then that's going to be something I can ask and get a response to.
Yeah.
But an asynchronous message, something I send at some point in time and they watch, read it, or listen to it later, I can ask the same exact questions. Because what I want the customer to conclude is, maybe there's a better way to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There has to be some other way that they can go about doing it, but they just need to understand how.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we overestimate what customers know about how what we sell can impact their business. Now, granted, a lot of times we're calling people at an executive level, very smart people. They've got advanced degrees. They've got 20, 30 years of experience. They know their business.
Yeah.
But they don't necessarily know how what we've got for sale can impact their business.
That's right.
They might need to hear some examples from some people like themselves in other businesses or even other industries, so we can basically share a case study or a success story of how other companies have used what we've got to offer in their business.
Right. And then they have an example, a real life example that would help them to apply that to say, okay, this person did this. This is what they gained from it. This is what we need for our company. This is where we're lacking.
Precisely.
Hopefully we'll gain too, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. And what that does is it not only generates interest, it helps to minimize perceived risk. If other people are having success, why can't we have that success?
Exactly.
It's proven.
Right.
Because we've got 3 examples here, success stories of other executives like me in our industry that have partnered with so-and-so company to solve specific problems or achieve specific outcomes.
Right. So
we can ask questions. We also can paint the picture of that desired future state or point C.
Yeah.
Here's how that sounds.
Okay.
61% of the companies that we worked with saw an improvement of such and such productivity in the first 6 months.
Amazing.
Now, I don't even have to mention a customer name to say that.
Right.
74% of our clients said that they were able to reduce this, improve this, or minimize that within the first year of implementing our solution.
Right. It's facts. It's proven.
Yeah. Right. It's proof or evidence, I like to call it. So we can have this conversation or begin this even asynchronously. But if we do get a customer to talk to us on the phone or in a video conference or live, what I suggest and what I've been doing for decades now is I literally lay that out with the client as a way of framing the conversation. So I'll literally say to the client, Mr. Customer, we have done a little bit of research on your business, and we know a little bit about what you guys do and how you do it, but I've got a few questions I want to ask, and you might be the only person that can answer these questions. But I want to really understand kind of how you're doing business today, what some of the current challenges are, if you have similar concerns or problems to some of our existing clients or not. So I got a few questions to ask around the current state, which I call point A. Then what I want to do is explore your desired future state. We call that point C. And understand kind of goals and objectives, what you're trying to accomplish, where you see yourself in the next 12 months, what it would look like if you could solve this or minimize this, what would you get out of this? And I've got some questions prepared for you there. So we're going to talk about where you are now, where you think you'd like to go, and then if it seems like we've got something to offer you, well, then we can come back and talk to you about that. And here's the question. Does that sound like a fair way to use the next 30 or 60 minutes, Mr. Johnson?
Absolutely.
That is a close, right?
That's a close. It's almost like a whisper because it's like, that's so good.
Yeah, sign me up. So rather than just walking in and start pitching at a customer, sell them on the idea that you're going to be diagnostic.
Yeah.
Get permission to be diagnostic.
Right.
I'm going to ask you some questions. Is that okay?
Yes.
And I've never yet had a customer tell me, no,
Right.
I just want you to pitch at me for the next 30 minutes and talk in my direction. They love it.
Yes.
When we want to take the time to understand them.
Well, because I feel like when you're just pitching something, I do feel like when someone has done that to me, I kind of fade out. I don't necessarily hear all of it because I don't know like you said, the C of the diagram. I don't know what it's going to do for me or why I would need it. And so I think it's so important to ask those questions and be able to know that this is going to help me. This is why it's going to help me. And here's proof of it. But, we also were talking about how would you recommend sales leaders start to leverage this with their teams?
Yeah, this is really good.
Yeah.
So if we do have that kind of a meeting, and we can either explain this or put it up on the whiteboard, what have you. That's the day-to-day application. But now for sales leaders, let's talk about how that applies. It applies in two ways. Still certainly with the client. So if they're in front of a customer, they're going to seek to understand current state, desired future state, and so forth. A lot of times a sales manager will be actively involved in the conversation with the customer.
Yeah, I would hope so. Right.
But if they're not able to travel along, they at least need to ask each person on their team when they go to meet with somebody. So tell me about their point A. Tell me about their current state. What did you learn about how they're doing business today? What are some of the challenges they're faced with? What are the consequences to those challenges? Because here's what's true. What drives sales rep behavior more than any other thing, more than comp plans or recognition or any other driver, what drives what they do and what they say and the actions that they take is the questions their managers ask them.
Yeah.
So if we ask questions about this approach to selling, understanding their current state, their desired future state before you go back now and position what we have for sale, if we ask questions about that, we're going to train in the on-the-job training here, salespeople how to do this well. So it boils down to really modeling this behavior when you're out with your sales guy, and also using that same line of questioning when you're asking about sales opportunities or visits that you didn't go on.
It is like thinking like the fish, right? I love that story. It really applies to it. So good.
So now I want to also bend this just a little bit here because there's another way that this applies that every sales leader needs to know about. And that is that, I think I said this in a previous episode, as a sales leader, we don't stop selling. We just start selling the people on our team on new ways of working, and different ways of behaving and different kinds of questions in front of customers, et cetera. A lot of that's driven by the questions that we ask. But this ACB concept applies to leadership as well. So the better as a leader can understand each person on my team.
That's right.
Where they're at in terms of current state. How well they are, how good are they in front of a customer?
Right.
How effective are they at negotiation? How good are they on that initial telephone call when they're trying to convert a kind of a cold call maybe into an additional meeting? I want to assess where they're at, that current state. And there are a lot of different ways to assess, but I like to emphasize the best way to assess is to go look at it, to observe it. So a lot of assessments tend to focus on, well, let's give them a questionnaire. How good are you at asking diagnostic questions? Well, I'm a 10.
Excellent. I'm 100.
100%. And that's only normal because sales guys, and I've been one for all my whole life, we want to do good, right? There's some ego involved.
Don't you always feel that sometimes you just put a little bit lower because you're like, I don't know, I guess I have to be humble
10,
in this.
But I'm at least a 9.
I'm a 9.
Sometimes, by the way, when we do those kind of assessments, a lot of times we ask, where are you today? But where do you want to be in 12 months? And sometimes they'll give you a little gap, right? So today I'm probably a 6 on this particular behavior, but I want to be at an 8 or a 9 in 12 months, which then suggests an opportunity for change.
That's right.
And a motive for change.
Yes.
So that kind of an assessment is not all bad. But I'll just repeat, the best way to assess how good are the people on your team at selling is to go with them.
Yes.
Listen in on some phone calls, join in on a video conference, get in the car and go ride along with them. It's not unheard of. I'm not the first guy to say this.
No.
But I just wish that sales leaders would do it.
Yeah.
I wish they'd get out of the office more and go see how people are doing out there, because then you can coach.
Why do you think sometimes they're not?
Excellent question.
Yeah.
Just like salespeople, a lot of times they're asked to do too many things that don't have much to do with selling.
Yeah.
We're scattered and pulled in 1,000 different directions. And for that reason, every senior sales leader, I think, ought to recognize that sending their managers on sales calls with their people is a very high priority.
Yeah.
Needs to happen every single week. They need to be able to observe and kind of take the pulse, if you will, of how well that salesperson's able to do. As one executive told me recently, he said, I don't get a chance to go on all these sales calls, but I want my managers to go with them to see, what are they saying in the customer's office?
Yeah.
What are they saying and what are they asking? I build rapport in showing how much I care about helping them to run their business better.
Yeah.
That's the best way I know to earn trust, is to take an interest in them.
That's right.
And their business.
Yeah.
Yep. So then for sales leaders, we need to understand where the salesperson's at.
Okay.
We also need to have some very clear standards of where we think that they ought to be in terms of certain kinds of performance. I always encourage sales leaders to look at what I call conversion rates. So conversions from initial outreach to a meeting.
Yes.
Conversions from one meeting to, let's say, a discovery kind of session where I bring in some other technical help, like your husband, the technical experts, to come in and get hands-on.
Yeah.
And then a conversion from that discovery into, let's say, an active opportunity to proposal. Look at those conversion rates, because if I don't have some sense of where they're at now, well, I don't know how to coach to get them to a place that I think they should be and where they want to be.
Right.
But here again, it's this ACB. Understand where they're at, define and sell them on how much is going to help them to get to point C.
Yes.
Then come back with the coaching.
Right.
Because nobody wants to be coached.
Yes.
But a whole lot of people would like to improve some aspect of their performance.
100%.
Whether they can turn initial conversations into opportunities, or turn opportunities into proposals, and proposals into closed deals, etc. This is the only way to do it. But I wanted to just share this ACB concept.
Love it. So good.
That we're going to step into in more detail in future episodes, because this has become like the underpinning for just about everything that we teach.
Yeah.
And because it's got such great application with customers, but also great applications for leaders to use with their salespeople. I just really wanted to share this. And so I hope that people might take time to download this diagram at the link in the description, because it's a game changer, and it's helped thousands and thousands of salespeople that have come through our workshops over the years.